Hello my friends, Articulate Storyline just had a big, long-awaited update that lets you send custom xAPI statements without using any code. Now in this video we'll go through some of my first impressions. It doesn't look like this functionality is there yet, so I probably will not be using it right now, but it is really exciting what this will make possible in the months or years to come. So let's dive right in and see what we can do with this functionality. Alright, so if you are not sure what xAPI even is, and you're hearing about it now for the first time, it's a technical specification to basically help the learning and development industry collect more specific, granular data about how people are engaging with learning experiences and how they're performing on the job. So before xAPI, we've been using something called SCORM, and the data we can get from e-learning experiences is quite limited. We can see whether or not someone started an experience, whether or not they completed it or passed it, and what score they got on a possible quiz at the end. So not a whole lot of data that we can get. But with xAPI, it follows this actor verb object format. So we can see not just, oh, Devlin completed the course, but Devlin spent 22 minutes and 15 seconds on the course. And Devlin responded to question 1 with the choice C, which is sandwiches or whatever. But the possibilities are really endless, and as the developer you get to decide what exactly is tracked and what data is getting reported back to the learning record store. Okay, now I have some videos on the channel about this. If you've been following the channel for a while, then you know this is what the channel started. It was all about xAPI, and if you do watch those videos, I'm a bit more robot-like. I was still figuring out the whole YouTube thing, but there is information out there for you to learn more about xAPI. The exciting part is that, historically, xAPI or implementing custom xAPI has always been a bit of a technical undertaking. You've had to use custom JavaScript, and you've needed a pretty good handle on how the specification works to implement it. And part of the reason I stopped producing content for xAPI is just because it wasn't picking up the traction that it seemed like it deserved, because SCORM, again, gives us such limited data, it's not very actionable. But with xAPI, the world is at our fingertips, and we can really identify user experience issues, and we can see where people are losing interest or losing engagement or dropping out of the learning experience. So a lot of opportunities. So I've been waiting for like a year now, ever since I heard that Storyline was going to implement this easy to use visual editor xAPI statement sender. But I've just spent a few hours playing around with it, and it looks like it's not quite there yet. I did just want to get a quick video out just to show you what I've been exploring and maybe see, if other people have had some chance to play around, maybe I'm missing something. But let's take a look at it together. I'll show you what I've been up to. Okay, so here we are in Storyline. This is just a project from my my Storyline Project Lab course, but the content isn't important. I've just been adding some random triggers here. So let's see. So we can actually create a new trigger. So we'll create a new trigger, and now in the latest version of Articulate Storyline 360, we have this send xAPI statement trigger. Okay, so this is new as of last month. So if we click on that, we see now we have some other options. We can change the verb. So the learner did what? They answered a question, they attempted an interaction, they attended something, they experienced something. So you see we have all of these predefined verbs that Storyline makes available to us. And since we're using this custom statement builder, again, it's up to us how we do this. So when someone starts this experience, this is the title screen, we could say that they attempted. So the learner attempted, and then we can decide what they attempt with this little drop down right here. So they attempted this slide, for example. Or we can say they attempted the begin button, but that wouldn't make much sense. So we could say they attempted this slide. And again, you see that's that actor verb object format. The learner attempted the title screen. Or we could say the learner commented on the video. Or the learner completed the entire course. So you get the idea, and you can see how it would be quite powerful being able to build custom statements like this. We could track every little thing. If you have a tab interaction, we can know exactly which tabs the person has clicked on, for example. And if you have other ideas about what we may be able to track with functionality like this, feel free to drop a comment below just to kind of inspire us on what we may be able to track. In this dropdown right here, I would have liked to be able to just type in my own custom verb right here, right? Because if I wanted to say the user clicked on something or the user selected something, I'm not able to do that from this nice, easy to use editor right here. You see, we only have, 10, 15 or so of these verbs that Storyline thought would be useful. But I would like to just be able to type in selected, for example, and it changed that to selected. So we can change the verb super easily from this editor. Not amazing. This object thing was kind of nice because you can do custom. I would have loved to see this for the verb, to do a custom verb of my choosing. But you can do that for the object. So the learner attempted ADDI 101. I could just type in the course name, for example, whenever they start the title screen. So the when isn't as important. We could do when the timeline starts, for example, on this slide. So that's the basic format. Now, I said xAPI follows this actor verb object format, but you can add a lot more to an xAPI statement. And if you've watched my xAPI tutorials, because I have like a 10-part playlist about how to send custom xAPI statements from Storyline using JavaScript. So again, more technically demanding, but probably still the better option if you're going to do this seriously. But if you've watched those tutorials, we can build more into the xAPI statement. Like there's actor verb object, but we can also include result information where we include certain scores or specific open text response answers. Now to do that, we have to click on this plus xAPI button right here. And this is something else that I don't think is amazing because watch, when we click on this, it opens up the custom xAPI statement editor. And like, that's fine, but when I click on this, it seems like I'm going to be adding, I guess it makes sense I'm adding something else to the statement, but it would have been nice to kind of set that it was going to be a custom statement earlier on, because I might not want to say that the learner attempted. Like I said, if I want to use a custom verb, I have to fill in something and then click on plus xAPI right here. So when we click on this, now we can edit the full xAPI statement. You see, and this is where it might get a little bit confusing if you're brand new to this. It obviously looks a lot like code. If you do want help making sense of this, I have this how to send custom xAPI statements tutorial. It is super long, but if you take the time to read it, you will have a pretty good grasp on how to manipulate this, how to build an xAPI statement. Again, super long, but this is the title of it here. And if there is enough interest in this, because I have a feeling xAPI is going to start getting more popular now that Storyline built this into the tool. So I think it's a big move for the industry, just because Storyline is the most popular authoring tool. I think there are going to be more teams, more companies, and more instructional designers who are trying to get their head around ID, and maybe it will put some pressure on the learning management systems to start working with this more. And again, I'm sorry, I know this video is a bit all over the place, but it's kind of a spur of the moment impressions type video, so hopefully this winds up being a little bit helpful. So that being said, if this is something you're interested in learning more about, or you do have questions, feel free to drop comments. I'm of course going to be keeping an eye on them, and if there is enough interest, I can get back into some xAPI content for you all, and we will figure out how to make the most of this functionality. All right, let's dive back into this. So for custom xAPI statements, you may notice there's no actor here. Okay, so we see the verb, this is the one we set, attempted. We see the object, we use this custom object ADDI 101. The ID is going to be some big mix of letters and numbers. Not super useful, we can't really tell much from that, but we won't get too deep into what this is right here. But we don't have the actor, right? So we don't know who is doing what. Now, if you upload this to a learning management system that supports xAPI or CMI5, then it will pull the user's information from the learning management system. Okay, so whenever we execute this, I just canceled the trigger, but whenever we executed that, it would say Devlin Peck attempted ADDI 101. And it would have my email address included as well, because it can pull that information from the learning management system. But let's take a look at this announcement from Storyline. So this is the actor, right? So we were talking, where does the actor information come from? I've already had some people ask me about this in the past few days, but let's look at this. So every xAPI statement needs an app and needs an actor. We need to know who is performing the action. You don't need to supply the actor when you publish for xAPI or CMI5, right? That's what I was just saying. The LMS will supply that information for you. Oh, there we go. But you must provide the actor when you publish for both the LRS and SCORM, or the LRS only. So you may still be wondering, what is that talking about? Let's take a look. So once we've added these xAPI, the custom xAPI statement triggers, we can publish our experience, and we would go down to LMS/LRS. Notice this doesn't just say LMS anymore. So when we do this, we have these different reporting and tracking options. Now, when I first tried this, I wanted to see, okay, is it possible to just not use an LMS at all? Can I report to an external LRS, but then just upload it to like a web server, like Amazon S3, or yeah, just like whatever web hosting you're using? And I tried supplying the actor information directly in the statement, but it did not work out. And I'll explain that a bit more later. I know it might be confusing if you're new. But let's check this report to an LMS. All right, so let's say we're hosting it to a learning management system, but we still want to get some of that additional data out of the experience. So we have these options, and these are the options you may be familiar with when you're going to publish. We see we can publish as a SCORM package. AICC is even older than SCORM, but we also have xAPI and CMI5. CMI5 is kind of like xAPI, but with additional rules. I can make a video about that if you'd like, but not super important right now. The only downside is that not every learning management system supports xAPI or CMI5. And that's what I meant earlier when I was like, hopefully this update puts some pressure on more learning management systems to support this kind of thing. Because if you have to publish as SCORM and you want to report to an external LRS to get all of this really minute detailed data, like with these triggers, the learning management system is not going to provide us that actor information. And that makes this a lot more technically challenging. Okay, so one solution I was trying, let me show you. I added it to like this button right here. Okay, so you see this is a custom xAPI statement that I set up earlier. If I click on this statement, we can see one solution I was trying was I tried to just add the actor information right here. So I just kind of hard coded in the actor information. We would be able to do this with a variable. So if this were to work, we could just include a text box in the learning experience. We could ask people for their name and their email address. And then we could just include the variable that's equal to their email address or their username. Okay? But this did not work. At least it didn't work when I tried to publish it for the web. Okay? Because a lot of these xAPI projects I've worked on, we'll just publish them to a website and we'll have people enter their username and email address right here in text boxes, like what you see on the screen in the background in Storyline. But the problem, I just couldn't get this to work. So I think the only way that we are supposed to supply this information to Storyline to then go ahead and send the statements is with query string parameters. And that, if you're not into the development side of thing, again, probably quite confusing, but I do want to mention it just for the developers out there. We would need to provide it with a query string parameter, and that's going to be like question mark, like actor equals, and I don't remember the exact syntax right now, but I think we would need to provide that information up here. And that's obviously going to be a bit more technical because how are we providing that information, right? It's not going to be the easiest thing for someone who isn't developer savvy or like coding savvy to pick up. Okay, so I would have loved to see this work to then go ahead and publish as, to publish without reporting to an LMS, just reporting to an LRS. Would have loved to be able to do that, upload it to a web server, and then have this work as desired, but that was not the case. So what I did do is I did report to an LMS. I also reported to an external LRS. LRS stands for Learning Record Store. I have a video about that on the channel if you want to check it out. And that an LRS basically just holds all of your xAPI data. So some LMSs have an LRS included, but at this point in time, none of them are very good, and it's very difficult to navigate them, at least in my experience. So we publish as an xAPI package. This lets us upload the course to an LMS that supports xAPI. So I used TalentLMS, and we're going to get into that in a second. But first, let me show you this report to an external LRS. We can't just click that. We need to then go ahead and select reporting and tracking to configure the LRS. So we will go to the second tab here where it says LRS, the Learning Record Store settings. The activity ID, this is going to be an ID for the overall like storyline file. So this like course or learning experience as a whole. We don't need to really mess with that, but that's what I mean. It's not going to be super identifiable just looking at this, but it will be unique. So I guess that's what it has to be. So there we have that. And then LRS configuration. If it's supplied at launch, it's going to need to be via a query string parameter. So whoever's in charge of the LMS is going to have to configure that. It's not going to be a simple task. But if we do manual, we can kind of hard code in the LRS endpoint, key, and secret. Okay, so I'm going to show you where we can get that with Veracity LRS. If you've watched my xAPI content before, you know this is kind of like my favorite LRS out there. The developers are great, and this is just such a developer-friendly LRS. Highly, highly recommend it. So once we log in, we'll have the option to like create an LRS. I'm not going to dive too deep into this here. I can do a video about how to create an LRS if that would be helpful. But if we expand this beneath the name, this is where we can get the endpoint. And as you can see, I just copied and pasted that into here. And then if we select this access keys option, we can see what the username and password is. So this one, again, it's just a test LRS. The username is user and the password is password. On some learning record stores, it will be called the API key and the API secret. So just know this may vary, and just check your LRS documentation for how to access this information. And this is a nice little setting too. You can test your settings just to make sure it is connected. So that was nice. That is how I went ahead and published this with the LRS information. Then I went ahead and uploaded it to TalentLMS. I have a YouTube video about how to upload a project to TalentLMS. It's basically the same process, only instead of uploading a SCORM package, we uploaded an xAPI package. Now, let's see what happens here and what I think the biggest problem is right now. Let's look at one of these triggers I added. So we are going to send an xAPI statement, the learner experienced picture. And I think I might have had this different when I published it. Like, I think I had it as the learner experiencing the slide when the user clicks the picture. So I'm going to refresh this and let's watch what happens in the LRS. So I'm refreshing the course. We will restart. And now I'm going to go to the statement log. Because like I said, this is where we can see the stream of all of these statements. And for me doing that, for me loading up the first screen of this course, here's what happened. We have a statement firing saying Devlin attempted, and then there's no object name. Okay, so Devlin attempted. The object does not have a name. Maybe that's because, let's see, do I have a title for the course? Yeah, so there is a title for the course, but for some reason this was not pulled through to the object name. So it's just blank. That doesn't look great, you see here. Then we see a statement, Devlin experienced the title screen. And we see a second statement that Devlin experienced the title screen, and a second statement that Devlin attempted just this blank object. Okay, so kind of strange, 4 statements just for loading the screen. And notice none of these are custom statements. Okay, we did not set any of these. We started creating this one, but I just like canceled it. Like, right, we have no custom statements firing when the timeline starts on this slide, but we still have 4 statements in our LRS. And the reason for that is because when we publish an xAPI package, like we did here, Storyline brings in all of these default statements along with it. That's something else that I do not love. We don't have any way to turn off Storyline sending all of these custom xAPI statements that we may not want. If I'm doing a custom xAPI build, I want to be able to decide exactly which actions we're tracking. But because we're not able to do it with just this option, or at least maybe it's possible, but it's a lot more technically demanding, and we need to launch it from the LRS, which I'm not even going to get into here, Well, then we need to have all of these statements that Storyline sends mixed in with ours. And then check this out. When I go ahead and click on this picture to send that statement, that custom statement that I created, I'll click on this. Let's go back over here. We will refresh. And notice it sends that custom statement twice. Okay. So very strange. So I'm not sure why it sends it twice. I only wanted it to send once. I'm going to press begin here. I added that custom statement to this continue button. So let's go back over here. Notice on the continue button, when the user clicks that continue button, we're sending this custom xAPI statement where I hard coded in the actor. All right, so let's click on that once. Now I'm going to go over to the data stream and refresh it. And look at this. So the first statement that sends, it uses this custom actor that I included. Notice there's no actor name. It's just this object type and the mailbox, object type and mailbox. But then it also immediately sends this second statement, which pulls it from the learning management system. And we know that because it includes my name, and I did not hard code in my name here. But once again, yeah, it's still sending two xAPI statements when we only want it to send one. And just to drive this home again, I also have a trigger on here. When the user clicks this picture, send a statement that they experienced the picture. Okay, so when I click on it, I'm going to click on it once. I'm going to refresh over here. Once again, it says that we experienced that picture 2 times. So this is going to cause a lot of problems for any kind of meaningful reporting to go on. I'm not sure why this is happening. I'm not sure if I'm the only one experiencing this. And if it is a widespread problem, I imagine it will get resolved pretty quickly. The combination of the double sending and the kind of lack of customization options about the default reporting, not loving that. And then also not being able to upload this to a web server makes me think that for a lot of the custom xAPI projects I've worked on in the past, I likely still would need to code them from scratch with JavaScript instead of using this program. But if Storyline does continue updating this and improving this, we can see how this will be a very powerful way to track very specific actions that people take within a learning experience. So right after this video, I'm going to record one about the other new feature that Storyline added, which is this elapsed time functionality. So we can see how long someone spends on a slide, in a scene, or in a course. So I'll go ahead and link to that video as soon as it is uploaded. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, right? Is this your first time hearing about xAPI? Were you lost half this video? Let me know in the comments if you even made it this far, or if you are a bit more advanced and you did get a chance to play around with this, please let me know what you think. Can you see yourself using this? What do you think needs to change? I'm looking forward to it. I am still excited about this, even though I can't see myself using it right now. And I'll be happy to create more xAPI content in the future if you all would like to see that. So thanks for making it to the end, and I will see you in the next video.